Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program, which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. Over the last year, we have been living through some very different times. And it is also true that we live, in some ways, in a church that has had to make certain adjustments regarding how do we continue our worship, our sacramental life during the period of the coronavirus. I'd like to entitle this presentation today, Liturgical Lessons in Time of Plague. And let me go through some practical things that I think we've learned some lessons from, and perhaps we should maintain even after the coronavirus has passed us by. And perhaps even some things that we should continue to do because we've learned so much about how we human beings are able to celebrate the sacraments, celebrate the Mass, but also to communicate with one another when we're even at a distance. The first thing I want to talk about is the sacrament of reconciliation or penance or confession. As you know, since the Second Vatican Council, it was encouraged that there be a confessional room. And that means a place where people could have privacy to sit and speak with a priest, either face to face or behind a screen. While the idea may have sounded very, very good at the time, I think over the years we've discovered that maybe it was not such a good idea for numerous reasons. First reason is that a lot of people confuse the sacrament with a chit-chat, just a session to get together and speak to the priest, or with some kind of psychological counseling, and it's not that at all. Secondly, it could lend itself to suspicion of inappropriate behavior. And we hear a lot about that these days. Everybody seems to have a Me Too story. And so why put ourselves in a dangerous situation, dangerous for the priest and dangerous for the penitent? Over this time period, since we've been subjected to the coronavirus, what we've done in our parish is we moved the confessions out into the church. Now, the church is big enough that we wouldn't be overhearing others' confessions. But what we have done is we have set up confession stations. I recommend that we continue that and provide portable screens with prie-dieux or kneelers so that people can go to confession and they can be secure in knowing that their confession is not being heard, and it doesn't degenerate into a simple kind of a chit-chat. Why did we make the change? Well, we were afraid basically of spreading germs. The little room could be an incubator for germs. All you need is one sneeze and somebody would panic. And so the change came about for a very practical reason, but I think it's something that we should maintain. I think the rooms are dangerous for a number of reasons, and I think confessions out in a public space, similar to the old days where there was a confessional where people could observe who's going in, who's going out, and the priest was separated from the penitent. So let's think about portable screens in the churches, open spaces. It's a good thing for the priest, it's a good thing for the penitent, it is a good thing for the sacrament itself, so that it is seen simply as a place where sins may be confessed and absolution given. And any other uses for the sacrament would not be permitted and would call people to schedule a separate appointment with a priest at another time. That's the first suggestion. The second suggestion has to do with the liturgy itself, for the most part, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And what I'm going to say to you, just like the sacrament of confession, what I'm going to mention are things that have always been known to be optional. That means you have an option to do it or not to do it. So I'm not going to be describing to you any kind of change that would diminish the liturgy or take away from the sanctity of the liturgy or make the liturgy invalid. But in the missal itself, certain things are optional. It seems that we want to take every option. And it's come to the point where some people believe that you have to have the option in order for the Mass to be correctly celebrated. So let's begin with this. During the time of plague, what have we done? We've asked people not to shake hands at Mass. Now, you might say, but I like shaking hands at Mass. Well, let's just think about that. First of all, we stopped it for very practical reasons. We don't want to spread germs. And you know as well as I do, germs are spread by contact, especially contact with hands. And we have in church many, many people who we don't even know. They're not members of our immediate family. Also, the fact of the matter is, it can be, and in many instances has been, very disruptive during the Mass. The sign of peace comes at a time which is most sacred in the Mass, a time when the Eucharist has been consecrated and people are being prepared now to receive the body and blood of Christ. And sometimes the handshaking, and if you're at a Mass with young people, it's the high fives and the hugs and the kisses, it becomes very, very disruptive. So maybe a lesson that we've learned, we don't do it. I think the liturgy has been a lot better without it. I think that might be something to consider doing away with because of the reasons I just stated. Next, at least since the time of Vatican II, the use of a common cup in order for people to receive under both species at Mass, the host and the precious blood of Christ, has become quite common in our churches. And yet, when we were attacked by COVID-19, wisely, we stopped providing communion under both species. We eliminated the cup. Now, let me be theologically correct here. We've always maintained that the full Jesus is received, body, blood, soul, and divinity, in just the reception of the host. And while some people say, well, it is a fuller sign, let's also remember that sharing that common cup, not vital, optional, is also a way that germs are spread throughout a congregation. There are some people who say, well, the alcohol in the wine neutralizes the germs. Folks, I don't think so, and I haven't found any conclusive evidence that it does, except people who might want to wish that it does. And so whereas we do not do it now for health reasons, perhaps it is a practice that should come to an end. It is not necessary. It is also dangerous. Let's think about that. I now want to go into some lessons that I've learned during this past Holy Week. I think they're important because not only are the Holy Week services extremely beautiful and extremely important to the life of the Church, but once again, there are options in the services, and perhaps these options are not simply for health reasons, but there are other practical reasons as to why they should be eliminated or perhaps rethought and done differently. On Holy Thursday night, part of the Mass of the Lord's Supper is the Mandatum. It means the command to the disciples that they must serve by washing each other's feet. On the part of Jesus, an act of humility, an act of service. it also is intended to be, was intended to be, a sign of Jesus instituting the Apostolic College. And therefore it was limited to 12 men from the parish, symbolizing the apostles, the Apostolic College. Now, over the years, since Vatican II, a lot of people have become woke, and they've almost have seen the liturgy as a forum for diversity. And so it began to formulate in people's minds that the washing of the feet should include women, and that way we would be inclusive. Well, once you go down that route, it no longer symbolizes the Apostolic College, since orders, holy orders, is limited to men. And then parishes began to include women in the washing of the feet, and then people demanded 6 men and 6 women. And so a rite that was meant to be seen as a rite of recognition of the Apostolic College began to change into something that became almost a politically correct exercise. Now, when Pope Francis became the Pope, he decided that he was going to have men and women, and even non-Catholics, have their feet washed. It took place the first time in a prison in Rome, and even a Muslim had her feet washed. And he said he was changing the meaning. It no longer had to do with the Apostolic College, but it was an act of charity and an act of love. Now, once we begin to change meanings, as the Pope did, is it possible that we lose something too? Is it possible that we lose something too? I think so. You lose the sense of the Apostolic College. As I said, the washing of the feet becomes almost a political thing. And some people jockey as whose feet are going to be washed, and that they have the correct number of diverse people represented in the 12. And so I think that the action itself has lost its meaning. A lot of it. It's become rather contentious in some places, and I think that it may perhaps be one of those options that we could and perhaps should eliminate. This past Holy Thursday, we eliminated the option simply because of fear of spreading the virus by contact with other people. Let me tell you quite honestly, the liturgy went beautifully without the washing of the feet. No one had any questions as to what happened to it. As a matter of fact, the flow of the liturgy and the essence of that evening, of the institution of the Eucharist and the priesthood, took center stage, and the washing of the feet did not detract from the central action of the Mass. Something to consider. The next point I want to make took place on Good Friday. Now, the Good Friday liturgy is an extremely beautiful liturgy, and you well know that it begins with opening prayer and then readings from Scripture, the reading of the Passion, and then, of course, there is the sermon after the Passion, and then the general intercessions take place. Now, after that, there is a portion for the veneration of the cross. And I'm sure many of you had this in your parishes in the past, where everyone is invited to come and kiss either a single cross, which is recommended in the directives, or if there's a pastoral need, and in a big parish like mine, where there are about 1,000 people at Mass, there are options to use different crosses and different people presenting those crosses to the faithful. Now, naturally, we had to eliminate that this year. Okay, for number one, Once again, what did coronavirus do? It made us more germ conscious. And so if we have people kissing the cross one after the other, once again, you have the spread of germs. A little wipe of the cloth doesn't solve that. Doesn't solve that. And certainly we don't want to bring cans of Lysol with us to church to clean the crucifix. We eliminated that. But what we did is we had the showing of the cross, behold the wood of the cross, and then a spotlight put on the cross, and then asked everybody to meditate and make a solemn bow to the cross. And it was a very, very powerful celebration, a very moving moment when everyone was focused on the cross and everyone bowed in adoration of that cross. This adoration period of the cross, as I said, beautiful. The old way, kissing, unwise, but there was something else. Time. It took a long time. And anybody that is anyway sensitive to liturgy, unless you're a monk living in a monastery, some ivory tower, if it takes too long, you often lose the impact of it. You lose the power of it, and people begin to get antsy in their seats, leave for the bathroom, or don't even want to participate anymore and go home because they've been in church for so long, because it could take a good period of time, especially in a big parish. Something to consider, perhaps a little tweaking, a little revision over there. It helps in many ways, keeps down the germs, and makes the service bearable on our persons, if you know what I mean. As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. Thought for the day. Our country is going through a tumultuous time. Many people are questioning the very foundations upon which this country has been built. One of the foundations that people are often forgetting is that this country was built on biblical principles, on justice and righteousness, and also upon charity. So much so that our founders had engraved on top of the rotunda of our Capitol in Washington the words of the prophet Micah. Remember, man, do what is right, love justice, and walk humbly with your God. The next big event during Holy Week is, of course, the Easter Vigil. And I'm not going to be recommending any changes. How do you like that? It's a magnificent event in the life of the church. You know how the event is divided into various portions. The ceremony of light, the lighting of the Paschal candle, the church in darkness, the church lit by the light of Christ. You know the readings, how they portray salvation history. And then you know the welcoming of the catechumens, those to be baptized and confirmed into the church, and the Eucharistic liturgy itself. There are some issues, though, and I'll tell you what these issues are. Nothing wrong with the liturgy. Nothing wrong with the liturgy at all. It is the time. It's time. And this year was 8:30 at night. Now, what does 8:30 at night do to old people? It's very difficult for older people to get out at night. Some of us can't see too well at night, and some of us are very tired at night. What we did differently this year, and this is part of the wonders of technology and what COVID has done in a positive way for us. We now have the masses and liturgical services live streamed. And every parish should invest in a system that will enable quality live streaming to take place. Many people have never seen the Easter Vigil, and it's a terrible loss to them not to have seen what beauty takes place in this most important event in the Church's liturgical year. So I encourage you to tell your pastors, and I encourage pastors, make sure that you have a good live streaming system, and that live stream goes out to the people who, for sometimes very, very good reasons, sick, old, tired, cannot be there, but they certainly would love to be there and view this in their own homes. This does not, of course, take the place of being there. You know, some people say, well, you got to be there for liturgy. Well, yes and no. Yeah, you get the full impact that's participating actively right there in church, but circumstances sometimes don't allow that to happen. So why deny somebody something that is available to them, that they could be inspired by, and don't let the perfect destroy the good. How's about that? Okay, now, having spoken about technology, the Catholic Church has to be on board with the latest technology, not just for live streaming, but for all events that take place in the church. And in my church, for instance, we have screens on the wall where people can either read along what the prayers are and what the readings are, and also sing along. Now, why do I say this is important? Because, once again, COVID said people shouldn't be touching everything. And if you have hymnals, what happens? Well, COVID has a field day. There are germs all over the books, I suppose. So, might be important to look at some good quality screens in the church, and that way people can pray along, read along, and sing along. Now, there is a practical side of all this too. Well, I should say there is a financial side to this too. Because of the COVID virus, many of the ushers and many of the congregants were fearful of passing the basket because of germs on the basket. Well, I understand once again the symbolism of an offertory collection, bringing the plate up at the offertory. However, could a symbolic plate be brought up? And that's a real possibility and something that parishes should consider. And as we have done now, we've put the collection baskets at the entrances of the church, and people should be encouraged to put their envelope, their cash donation into the baskets. Some people say there is a psychological effect when the basket passes by somebody, that they feel like they have to put something in. Well, that's true. I'm not going to deny that. I think it does have a good psychological effect. Hey, I better give my $1. But something else has come up now too. Online giving. Parishes should continue to promote online giving. And when people register, that should be the first option, online giving. Instead of people giving $1 or $2, they might put in $5 a week if they make a commitment to do this on a regular basis, either through their checking account or through their credit card. And this way, there's not any fear of germs. Maybe there's no disruption in church because of counting, collecting the money. But I believe that collections will greatly increase if we produce quality liturgies for our people, good live streaming for our people, and the opportunity for them to give online so that even if they're not in church for a certain weekend, they're on vacation, their donation comes in on a regular basis. And I think this will greatly enhance the income of the church, and then people must be able to say that income is being wisely used because I can feel attached to my church wherever I go. I hear people coming to church and telling me, Father, we've been watching Mass all over the place, different countries, different states. We vacation at St. Agnes, and now we continue to see St. Agnes even when we're not here. We have a home someplace else. We still feel attached to this parish. And so the technology is important. The online giving is important. It keeps people connected, albeit in a different way, but it does keep people connected to one another, does keep people connected to their parish. Now, having said all that, as I said, what I've said to you is nothing radical. The suggestions are options, and during the plague, we have said we don't want to take these options anymore. My belief is that we may be better off without them. And so as we come out of this crisis, as we come out of this plague, it may be a good time for pastors and parish pastoral councils and liturgists and bishops to think about what lessons have we learned and how can we be a better church because of the coronavirus. God bless you. I thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm for action, and I hope you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.